welcome to another episode of From Right to Red. I'm Craig, and I'm joined with my co-host Paul, and we are diving directly into a conversation that Paul and myself partook in earlier today. Let's listen in. Did you see the latest on the ceasefire negotiations?
Not since, was it Sunday or was it Monday that Biden said, like, here's what I think, and then he still said no to that.
Yeah.
That's the last I heard. Because today I've purposely, I don't know, since like 7 last night, I haven't ingested really anything. I was doing the opposite of out of spite.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, more so in solidarity.
Yeah.
So that's why all of a sudden I look at my phone, there's like 13 messages in the group chat. And I'm like, for our final episode, Craig outbots the bot.
Yeah, I was getting a little nutty.
I was getting a little nutty too. Hell yeah.
The latest that I saw was like, so the last thing that I saw before this newest news update that I saw was that Netanyahu was like tentatively agreeing to the ceasefire. That was like 2 days ago, and then today I see that like they're saying no now, that they're not agreeing to it, which is like
classic Israel. First of all,
I literally I was hoping you already knew that. I know you've done like,
surprised in the least. That is the oldest trick in the book for them.
Right. What's crazy to me is that a year ago, Paul, if I would have told you like this exact same thing, you would have been like, oh, well, you know, they're going back and forth. There must be like issues in the negotiation. But now that you've done your deep dive on Israel and Palestine, you're like, oh yeah, this is like exactly what they did at Camp David. Like, yeah, exactly what they do at these negotiations.
I had heard of, I think the main only thing I had really heard negative about Israel was, I think a lot of people around our age have the image of Rachel Corrie burned into their head, even if they don't know why they know that face, that picture of her. A lot of people would recognize the picture. That was really the only negative thing I had for a long time, which than
is gruesome. Like, still,
hearing,
even if that's the only negative thing that we have, it's like,
yes, but that story of like, oh, you know, she's there being an activist and they just bulldozed the house with her in it, like
literally ran an American citizen over with a bulldozer.
Yeah, like that was like the only thing. So if that's like really the only huge story you've heard, you're like, man, that one time.
Right.
But like there's been times like even way back where Israel has like bombed at one of our spy ships and then been like 12 runs later of dropping bombs. They're like, oh, yeah, I guess it was an accident. Like,
right.
That's like what they do all the time. But before that, I had like that base understanding of like thousands of years people have conquered that land and it's been fighting, whatever, that classic narrative that we're supposed to believe, like which it has been conquered many times, but how we were given that story is not how it went.
No, not at all.
I heard like from family and stuff, like how there was a separation at the Zionist movement, like at its big moments. There's always been a separation of Jews, literally Jews themselves, like being separated on the issue on whether or not they support Israel. So I knew that existed. I just didn't really know why or all of the depth. And now that I've done quite some deep dives, it's like some of the most inhumane shit I've ever seen or read about in my life.
Yeah.
Like on par with the other most obscene thing we were all taught, which I don't know why we have all this time dedicated in school to the Holocaust. And then right after Nakba happens and they're like, no one should ever have to know about that. Don't tell anyone. Just
no big deal.
They don't need to know. That's fine. Like that to me it's such a clear sign of how were indoctrinated from the beginning here. Like, you're going to know what we want you to know, and you're going to feel how we want you to feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to get up every day in that school and pledge your allegiance to a fucking flag. Like a psycho cult.
Right. Just insane.
All right. So, what is, if he is wishy washy right now, what do you think is an actual possibility for Netanyahu's next move then? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's backed into a corner. He doesn't have many options, but he's not wanting to agree to peace.
Well, I was thinking about that exact question yesterday morning. Is like, okay, so Netanyahu's saying yes, then saying no, then saying yes, then saying no. He's got people in his government that are saying, if you end this war, basically your presidency is over. Because not to get like too into the weeds, but like the way the parliamentary system works is coalition style governments in Israel. So like there are heads of other parts of the coalition that are basically saying you won't have a ruling coalition if you end the war in Gaza. So we know that like Netanyahu's not going to give that up, right? Not willingly, at least. He's going to have to be forced to that position, as far as I can tell, in my best guess, right? So that isn't really much of an option, and that was what I thought was like the biggest factor in stopping this from going through. But now I saw some news yesterday in the afternoon that Israel had started intensifying strikes in Syria against Hezbollah targets. And so now I'm like trying to figure out why they would be doing that on like the brink of a ceasefire in Gaza. And I'm kind of almost wondering if Netanyahu's trying to create an out for himself.
A new
If I can
place.
open up a new front against Hezbollah, then end the war in Gaza, I can continue
That
this military coalition, without having to actually give up.
you, you know how much
I
sense
don't,
that makes when you think about the Iranian embassy too,
yeah,
and how like he clearly was trying to egg him on and get him into a war.
100%.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh shit, that makes
Yeah.
sense, dude.
Yeah. So, that's where I think his head is at right now. I have this is all just vibes based analysis,
Oh
but
no, it's frozen.
oh, I see that too. It says trying to reconnect. Can you still hear me?
Before the CIA like dropped our internet connection,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
uh, I was agreeing with you. Like once you said that, it clicked about like him only keeping power as long as there is like some type of war or conflict. He has to be heading that coalition,
Right.
like seeing Iran, and then now apparently you said he's attacking Hezbollah again,
Hmm.
which like I know they've been kind of attacking from the north and said they won't stop until
This was a
they're done
major
in Gaza.
escalation, though. Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's back to that classic Israel. Like, they've always made it a point to be like, oh, you threw a rock at me? Well, I'm
Right.
going to drop a 2000 bomb on you to make sure
Yeah.
we all remember who has the most firepower.
Yep.
Like, I think
And
there's
they do
even
it
a term for
strategically.
that in war. Like, it's something escalation of, like, it's a,
Escalation of force.
yeah, like where you want to be the one to always put out the most firepower last. Like, the
Yeah.
US dropping the atomic bomb of like, you know what? Let's just, show we have the strongest and like we're
Be
willing to do
done.
it.
Yeah.
And it's
It's like
that
trying to get
tactic.
themselves into. I feel like it's like they're like fighting against themselves, but I feel like a lot of it is like them trying to get the best footing for what's next, because this has been a really sloppy operation from top to bottom. I know that like we joke about the IDF being incompetent, but I just feel like they know internationally they're on the ropes right now.
Yeah.
The only thing that's
Oh
ever
yeah.
been keeping Israel doing what Israel does for the past 70 years is the fact that the American public hadn't fully flipped on them yet. And that is
Yeah.
changing. Like the narrative is changing. Once the American people are
Ooh.
fully flipped on Israel, like they can only keep afloat for so long, and I know it's like really easy to get um, disheartened, you know. But when public opinion finally shifts on something, it can only stay that way for so long before the forces of, you know, democratic forces, they are so much more powerful than people realize. Michael Prunty talked about this all the time. You know, um, when he saw I think it was Marcos at the White House, visiting the White House, and he had like 180 protesters with him, and they just felt so powerless to see this horrible enemy visiting the heads of state of our government, while they just had, you know, this tiny little band of people that were just powerless and doing nothing. But then 4 or 5 years later, Marcos is deposed, he's gone. You know, the forces of democracy overthrew him and overcame those forces of reaction, and it happened in a democratic way. So sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that, but like uh, Israel are on their heels right now in a way they've never been before, simply because of public opinion in America. So it's pretty cool to see. You know,
which
hopefully the winds are fully changing this time.
I love that that's kind of where this conversation has taken us, because that was even one of my like news things that I saw that I wanted to bring up was I can't remember which mainstream outlet it was, but it was one of the mainstream news outlets that
Epic Times.
I saw the oh my god, I saw a clip and they were actually covering how one of the main reasons that people's opinion on Israel is changing is their own fault. And they talked about how they have all of the Telegram chats and stuff, and like they are recording themselves doing these crimes and
Yeah,
putting it out on the internet, and the world can then instantly all see the crimes they just recorded themselves doing. One of the things was I like a lot of people calling them the IOF now,
yeah,
like because they're an offensive force. I mean,
right,
let's be real.
right,
But a guy in the IDF IOF, and he's saying, "Well, how am I not supposed to rape those girls in front of their crying mom?" And it's like that's the attitude, that's the mentality these people have, and they're putting it out in the world for you to see. Like public opinion is going to change because of their own actions. They're shooting themselves in the foot. Like maybe there's going to be some far right like white supremacist guys that latch onto that. You know, there's pockets of that all over still. You know,
right.
there will be people that latch onto that. But I believe most humans in America see that type of stuff and it just doesn't make them feel good. Whether or not they've stood for Palestine, something like that should make you not feel right. Like that should
Right.
make you feel something inside that they're acting that way, they're talking that way, they're sharing like these horrible videos mocking these people that they're slaughtering. Like it's good in a way. Like I wish that didn't exist, but it's good that they're putting it out themselves. Like
Yeah.
you can't claim, oh, these are fake videos and it's fake news. Like you put that shit out yourself, dude.
Yeah.
Like
Come on.
that you recorded yourself on your own phone and put it out into the world. So
Fucking
I
dumbasses.
I just hope more people are seeing that. Like if a mainstream media like covered that story, you know, it's but then it must have been either Fox or something else, but because I know by the end they were like, you know, they need to stop this because this has always happened in war. It's just now that people see it, they're never going to feel okay with it. Like they ended up, you know, coming back around defending it somehow. Like,
Yeah.
but still, the fact that that news story was out there, like,
Yeah.
you should feel bad seeing that kind of stuff. It's
Definitely.
not okay.
Yeah. It's wild the shit they're
It's
doing.
almost like we should just fill some bags with poop, send them on over.
Right. That is such a great response.
That is, I
Um,
wish everyone surrounding Israel would do that right now.
yeah, that would be funny.
That's not, that's not me like inciting anything, right? That's not going to hurt anyone.
Dude, people
But
were
everyone who lives near there definitely start pooping in bags. Sending
I
them
gotta
over.
before I keep going, I gotta give some context in case anybody wonders what the fuck we're talking about. So for the past like 2 months now, the South Korean government has run this like propaganda campaign where they've been sending flyers on balloons over into North Korea, like talking about how life can be better, you know, run away from your home, leave your family and kids, and come join us in the South, right? And apparently, the residents of North Korea got sick of this over the past 2 months. And while I don't fully condone what they did, I do see that it's pretty fucking funny. They filled their own balloons with and tied them to bags of human shit. So and like
Hell
sent
yeah.
that back down to the south, which I think is hilarious. You know,
Yeah, I
like
mean, we can't fully like condone that behavior or incite other people to do such things, but
right.
like I kind of want to. It's
I'm
that
not
is
going to be
just so
like,
funny.
dude.
Like,
I got into it with some guy who was claiming that it was like a chemical weapon or a biological weapon attack, and I was just like, come on, dude, give me a fucking
oh my
break.
god. Jeez,
Like,
they're all going to get salmonella.
yeah, if I like saying that is a chemical weapon attack is calling like any homeless encampment like a nuclear wasteland. You know, like,
Well,
come on,
I mean,
bro.
if you're far right Republican, you probably would. So,
I guess fucking losers.
yeah, that story though was one that gave me a good laugh. I love that we all joke about poop, and we probably have for thousands of years as a people. And even like we saw it with France dumping manure. Like we're still doing poop jokes in
Yeah,
2024, and I love that.
they always play, dude. They always work.
Like, yeah, the poop jokes, yeah, keep them coming.
Everybody likes a little poop, you know.
While we're still on that Israel topic, though, the other one that I had that we keep seeing more and more countries kind of as a whole, like, or their leaders come out and say that they're like not backing Israel anymore, and they're not afraid. Like,
Yeah,
uh, and so Chile joined South Africa's genocide lawsuit against Israel,
which is
which
fantastic news.
is like, hell yeah. Like, I
Yeah,
think I was telling you just the other day, South America is a place that I root for to have a comeback because like I know what we have done, like our country has done to South America, and I know they used to have such a rich history and culture, and like they've thrived at times. They've had their own whole societies. Like I hope they come back and thrive there, and to
yep,
see South American countries joining in solidarity with other people being oppressed is amazing. Like
right,
at a certain point, if you keep creating radicals for 50 years, you're going to leave so many enemies out there. You know, the enemy of my enemy is my
right,
friend. Like, if you keep making enemies out of that many groups of people, it was only a matter of time before everyone's kind of like, hey, there's enough of us on this side.
right.
So I love seeing
Um,
that. I love solidarity. I love Palestine not being alone for one of the first major times in years.
yeah.
Is they might not be alone finally.
The I think the saddest part for me now, as somebody who has been following um, this conflict for over 20 years now, like 16, 17, whatever is when I started. What like is the saddest to me is that even if like tomorrow every single wish that I have for the future of Palestine was like willed into existence, it's already been such a tragedy, you know? Like
Yeah, there's
there's
trauma in that region that's going to
right,
be there a long time.
right. And it just feels sometimes like it's even if you get the biggest win possible from here on forward, that it's still just like such a tiny consolation prize for all of this 70 years of just complete inhumanity that we've put this group of people through. So that is
It
quite sad.
it is heavy and it's sad, but I'm trying to remain somewhat hopeful that, things can be restored like in time. It's going to take a long time,
Right.
but that's, I know it's like wanting that movie ending, but like I do try to keep that hope that like one day,
Right.
it's, we might not
Just
get to see it, but maybe one day there will be full healing.
right. And just to be clear, my what I mean by like a full, like wishful thinking, whatever the end goal for Palestine is swapping the population of Palestine with the residents of Palestine, Ohio. That's what I
Yeah,
think
yep,
is.
exactly. That was yep, that was in the plan from day one,
I think that would
actually.
actually that would be beneficial for everybody involved if we
Yeah.
just swapped them out. No, I'm just kidding. Oh
I
God,
mean, at
I'm
that
sorry. I'm
point,
trying to
we can
make
just
light of
swap all
a
of
topic that was
Ohio.
heavy for me.
Let's just swap all of Ohio with anyone.
Exactly my point.
Just uh
All right, so more uplifting news. This is one that you and I haven't even talked about. There was just a presidential election to our southern border in Mexico, and we
yes.
had a pretty big win for the like a pretty far leftist party in Mexico. They practice like socialism, what they call socialism in the 21st century, which like
Yeah. That's
ideologically.
yeah.
Look,
We do not have to talk about that one on
this
an
is what
episode
I'll
ever if
say.
you don't want.
What I'll say is left unity, left unity, left unity. The it's better than where they were before. You have to look historically where we're
Yes. Yes.
going.
I agree with
It's the
that.
correct direction. It's
But do
fantastic.
I
And
want to analyze it and do an episode on it ever?
no,
Absolutely
no,
not.
no, no.
But
But
yes,
also
it's
like
better than what they have had.
the great thing about so like whenever you want to investigate a country that is outside of the imperial core, it's also important to remember that like things there happen a lot quicker here, right? So like if we had a social democratic party that rose to like actual power in the United States, like was elected president, there's we would roll our eyes a little bit because we'd be like, well, there's no way that's actually going to lead to like full scale communism or socialism or anything like that. But in these countries that are on the imperial periphery, in the third world, like that don't have as tight of a grip as they do here in the imperial core, there's been plenty of times where a social democratic party leads to very revolutionary changes. So it's a possibility still. And the coolest part is the president that got elected is a PhD climate scientist, which I think is always pretty dope to have
Oh,
somebody that knows their shit. She's a badass
Claudia
chick, yeah, that knows her shit.
Scheinbaum. I
Yep.
can never remember how to
Sean, I
pronounce
don't know
her
how to
last
pronounce
name.
it either, but
But
yeah,
like, I had to look it up because I couldn't remember her name as you were talking about her.
yeah,
Because I
she's sick.
remember looking at the people running at one point, but I'm surprised she got it.
Yeah,
That's awesome though. I'm just hoping something good comes out of it and that it's not like there's a lot of history in our country of even people that you think are going to do something don't. They
right,
just get themselves elected on saying they will. So I'm
right,
hoping they get some real positive changes.
yes,
That would be cool because we've grown up our whole lives seeing Mexico not thrive to its full potential, I guess is a good way to say it.
yeah,
Uh, a lot of cartel running too much of the government, and, it's, I guess, CIA operations just out in the open.
yeah. Well, that's
Just
that.
less
I
hidden.
mean,
It's,
yeah, and
selling guns and drugs to fund their operation and secretly control the government.
did you ever read that
So,
book? I think I
anyway,
recommended. I think I recommended it to you once. I don't know if you ever read it. It was called "Drug Cartels Do Not Exist." Have you ever
I
read that?
know you recommended it to me. I did not read that
Um,
yet. I kind of forgot about it till right now.
we should
Um,
do
let
a
me.
episode on that. Actually,
That book is of I can freely get it in a PDF form online. Is what I was saying right before
Yeah.
CIA cut the internet
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And honestly, though, it's probably so base that I should pay to get the actual book.
It's not that based. It's
No? Okay.
still no. So I think the analysis that the author reaches is kind of incorrect, but the evidence that they push is interesting if you take a look at Mexico from a more a broader, more dialectical view than the author was willing to do. Like they're not Marxists,
Yeah.
but I think
Well,
you'll read between the lines.
yeah, and when you really, I don't know, the whole drug topic is one we could do a whole series on, because
Yeah,
when I learned how drug trade actually works, literally people talking about like, oh well, the drug traders run Mexico. Bitch, drug traders run every fucking government that exists on the fucking planet.
they're a
Governments
giant.
have been created
Yes,
by the drug lords. Like
they're a giant retail
half the
operation.
time. Yeah, that's like half the time how like some countries in the past have been created, of like, we got such a big industry built here, like
Yep.
we're running it all anyway, like we just are the government. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that, it's just in Mexico, it's just they're aware of it.
Yep.
Here people just like to pretend that most of the drugs let into our country are on purpose.
I kind of wanted to talk about Epic Times for a bit.
this
Can I
this is
do
gonna
it?
be an 8-hour episode, guys.
I'll try and keep it short. I won't do like a whole episode, but I want to talk about it a little bit.
um
Or do you
Let
not
me
want
just
to?
double check I
Do you have
don't
more
have anything
topics?
else.
No, you probably have a ton more. Let's go through the rest of your shit and then like don't listen to me. I'm an idiot, bro. I'm drunk and high right now.
No, I don't. I don't think I have anything else big, really,
I
for
did have some other
news,
stuff too.
other than I still can't get over, it's starting to bother me how big of a push there is in the youth who tends to be pretty left, just despising Lenin.
Oh, right.
That's like, okay, everyone has flaws. Every single leader, especially if you are doing a revolution, you probably got to do some bad things along the way.
Not only that, but you're doing something brand new.
But
Like
like
people don't get this.
they just view him as like, oh, he just slaughtered innocent people, as like the take that a lot are having. And that's, oh,
Normally
that's
I hear
just
that about Stalin. When did this start with Lenin?
right. So like, I'm just, but maybe it's also like I need to touch grass, because it's all just online that I'm seeing it.
That's
But it's
true.
like everyone who's like younger than a millennial,
Look,
it
you know what?
seems like
Ultimately,
has that view.
I feel like this, man. Like I've spent probably I've spent significantly more time than any man reasonably should arguing with people about historical figures, and
That's fair. That's
I,
probably true.
I feel like I'm kind of at the point now where it's like there's no time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
like let's.
there's no time for this shit. So like to me, what I'll try and do is like if somebody tells me they don't like Stalin or they don't like Lenin or they don't like Mao or they don't like Che, or they don't like Fidel, or they don't like who, like whatever, right? What I'll do is I'll try and like figure out like something that they might care about, something that they might be interested in, and like feed them some piece of ideology that solves something for them or sheds a new light on something that they're interested in that is by one of those people that they despise, right? And it's all just about this. The whole point of doing that is just looking at, like you said, nobody in this world is perfect. And we need to get away from great man theory entirely because there are no great men in history. There are just material conditions, right? And there are mouthpieces for those conditions. That's all that's happening. That's all that's taking place. So, yes, people are shitty people and people do shitty fucking things, but they also sit down and think really hard and really deeply about really complicated topics and come to conclusions that not only are theoretically correct on paper, but more importantly, are effective in the real world at making massive change for huge amounts of people, right? So like if you look at what the ideas of Lenin and what his revolutions created for the average Russian person, for the average USSR citizen, it was an incredible gain from where they were previously, right? When they were in their feudal system. So I don't give a fuck, like ultimately, like I don't care. Okay, he like he did a bunch of bad shit. That's cool. I don't care. Right? I mean, I don't know what else to
Yeah,
say at this point.
it's it's
I'm
one
just
that,
tired. We gotta get
yeah.
moving. You know what I
And
mean?
lately,
We
like
gotta do what works.
I said to you recently, like lately it's felt like almost, for lack of a better term, like it's putting a fire under my ass. Like it's starting to feel like, oh shit, like people are kind of waking up to these ideas and more people are protesting. Unions are doing more than we've seen in years. Like I'm kind of getting to the point like that same thing of, do I have time to argue every last little bit like that?
Right.
Because right now we kind of just need to get out there and organize and inform the basics. Like
Yeah.
we need to get moving and get people understanding these concepts soon, because
Speaking
we
of
might need them to understand them very
very
soon.
soon. Speaking of
Like,
getting out there, Paul, I want to do a little teaser.
all right, yeah, you want to give some, like
What do
now
you
we have,
think?
we're
What
going
do
to
you
set the
think?
bar way up here, so we have to perform.
I know that's what I'm worried about. Is should we tease it at all, or just see what we get first?
I mean, no one likes a tease, but it
It's
is
true.
kind of the most exciting thing so far for
I'm
the
pretty
pod.
stoked about it. How are you feeling? Like honestly, I'm
Honestly,
I'm going through moments of pure panic, if I'm honest with you. But I have
oh, absolutely.
anxiety
But
issues, so
yeah, I have awful anxiety issues.
yes, yeah,
It's terrifying, but it's also like, it's one of those things that I feel like makes it feel more real.
yeah,
Like this is a real thing we're doing, and maybe one day it might reach people,
right,
like we might actually be able to do something with this.
yeah.
It makes it seem more real than just like, oh, this is a fun thing here and there we jump on and do. It's like, oh, we could do something with this thing.
The one worry that I have is all right. Let me phrase it this way because I think this is a more positive spin on how I'm feeling entirely, and I think that's important. So I think if there is like what we're expecting, what we're seeing in our mind's eye right now is like, at least in mine, is like the metal stanchion type lines maybe of people that we can like actually have like interactions with and interviews with, and people wearing Trump merchandise and stuff like that, like you see in these like videos online all the time, right? If that is the case, I think we're gonna nail it. We're gonna do awesome. It's gonna be funny. It's gonna be great. We're gonna have awesome clips.
I
It's gonna
don't
be
think it's
beautiful.
I don't think there's gonna be as much of that as we want, though.
Exactly. That's the only worry that I have, is that it's just gonna be really boring shit.
Yeah. But honestly, like,
Even if it's boring,
at,
we can go through like the hallways between like stupid sessions. Like even if it's the most boring,
yeah,
like you've been to sales conferences that are boring as
I
fuck.
figured the most
Imagine
fun
if it's
would
like
be
that
those moments of
in
asking
between.
random ass people shit in the hallways.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
I feel
waiting
like
in
that'll
between
be the
sessions.
best. Yeah, that'll be the best shit
And I
anyway.
put up a recommend me questions type thread on TrueAnon a couple days about it, and so, one of the guys who has had press passes for a long time, since like Bush, was like, "Oh, there's usually like vendor booths in
Hmm.
that area," which I don't really remember ever seeing in the past. But I'm sure we'll have a better look around with our passes.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, if we can find some like fucking weirdos that are at like
Yes.
vendor booths that are trying to sell random shit or like push random
And
shit, and like
yes,
interview
and
those
fuck with
fucking psychos,
them.
or
Yes.
watch their sales pitch that is like insane. You know who might be there because she comes to Metro Detroit things quite often is the monster lady, 666 lady. If she gets a vendor booth,
Yeah. Oh my god. I am definitely going to talk with her if
yeah,
she's there.
if
Oh
she's
my
there, dude, that
goodness.
would be so funny. We could
So
get
I
some
think I
straight content on that.
I think I told you my friend ran into her and where she had a booth set up and she
Mm-hmm.
was trying to talk all about it. And he just essentially gave her like I don't believe in heaven or hell and just like walked away. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that is the best response you can give a person like that of like,
I feel like what
I'm
we should
I'm not
do,
buying what you're selling. Like, get me out of here.
if I somehow get like a like just somehow get like a whiff that she might actually be there, because they haven't sent like the final itinerary for the whole show yet. It's like a real skeleton itinerary. If they send it and there's like a 2 hour block of like vendor show and it has like supported people in it and like something weird like that is listed in there, or like somehow I can see that she's there, I want to go like into like really deep angelic biblical lore
Oh
and
my
try and
god.
ask her like where she thinks Trump like falls in the hierarchy of angels, like something like that.
Yes, that is good.
I'd just be like an expert on it because I could like pick it back up really quick, you know.
Jeez. Yeah. Oh my god. Uh I have been seeing. I told you I've been seeing these conservatives posting some heinous shit, like the meme that says Jesus was convicted in a sham trial, and I still follow him. And the fact that you would even compare Donald Trump to your Lord and Savior is insane to me. Like, you have to
Dude,
be losing your mind if you are actually a Christian and you just compared Trump to Jesus. Like, what in the world? What is happening?
dude, when I think back on my Christian education and my Catholic education, I really have like a lot of like
Resent?
nos- no, I have
Oh yeah, me
nostalgia.
neither.
No, I have nostalgia for a lot of it because I feel like a lot of the messages in Christianity are very good and very powerful and very real
Oh
and
yeah.
important.
Most religion has good morals and like lessons to learn in them
I
somewhere.
love it. And like if I felt like my body like was actually physically spiritually connected to Christianity, I think that would be like so amazing and so awesome. But what drives me nuts is people that claim to be Christians doing things like that, where
Mm-hmm.
they're posting memes comparing Donald Trump to Jesus Christ. Like,
Yep.
what? That's not a
Like,
Christian thing to do.
no,
It
it's
just, and
not
I'm
at
not
all.
like trying to tell them their religion because I'm not religious anymore, and they claim to be religious. So like technically, they're the ones guiding the ship of their own religion. But to me, it doesn't seem like that is a core tenet of
Yeah.
Christianity.
It's
You
yeah,
know,
it's odd to
I don't
me.
know.
Um and so before I forget, I do have another bit. You can
Oh, you
cut
do?
this part out. Um because I do have an idea for a bit. If like cuz I was imagining that, worst case scenario as an overthinker of like what if it is boring? I imagine that same shit. And I'm
Yeah.
like my bit at that moment will be my quick on the feet wit, and I will just like if a speaker just got done speaking, I want to go ask someone instantly right after, but purposely remember what they said just a little bit wrong. If that makes
Twisted a
sense. Be
little
like,
bit.
so when they said this, and like, but I'll have it just off so it's like totally a different
The
meaning. They'll be like,
opposite.
I
Yeah.
don't think they said that. Like, yeah, we all just
We
saw.
just heard it. It was huge breaking news. Are you crazy? Are you
Oh, it
crazy
cut out for a
again?
minute. Yeah,
Am I
but yeah,
back?
that
Okay.
I feel like that would be a fun bit just to mess with people. They'll be like, "What are you talking about? That's not what they said." I'd be like, "Yeah, we all just heard them say this."
We just watched it go down. What are you talking about?
Yeah, like something that just flip one word out of it that'll change the whole meaning. And just like, no,
Right.
that's not what they said. Like we can just fuck with people at that point and just be as serious as we can. Like ask the question as serious as possible.
Right. Sorry, I was
The
looking at the settings for a second to see if I could turn down like
Yeah, this
my
internet
video or
connection of
something.
yours is
I
really
know.
the CIA
Um,
is trying to take us down.
they're really trying their hardest, man. All right,
All
fuck
right.
it. I can't
I'll
figure it
let
out.
you talk about epoch times now.
Is that how it's
I want to
pronounced?
no, but I want to pronounce it wrong on purpose.
It's actually
Epoch
like
times.
I feel like it's more informative to say it that way at least once, so that if people are googling it, they're not searching epic because it sounds
Yeah.
just like epic, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I kind of wanted to talk about this for a little bit because I saw this
God
in.
damn it.
Oh, am I breaking up again? I think I'll come back because it's not giving me a
Oh,
warning
you're
yet.
coming
So I'm gonna
back.
just keep talking.
Yeah, you're coming back.
There we go.
Jesus.
So this was just reported. The Department of Justice is looking into a publication called the Epic Times. It's pronounced Epic Times, but it's spelled EPOCH, so it's like Epoch Times. The Department of Justice says the Epic Times newspaper is an epic money laundering operation, and I really want to explain to the listeners why this article headline, when I read this article headline, why I like sprang out of my seat. But in order for me to explain to you why
You
I care about
got
a
to know epic
newspaper
times.
called the Epic Times, you need to understand that there is a cult complex in what is it, Deerfield or Deer Park, New York. The leader of the cult believes that he can like phase shift through walls. He's Chinese.
And this isn't a bit. This isn't a bit.
He's Chinese, and he gets funding. We'll leave the funding off the table right now because I know people that are listening are like, "Oh, here comes the connections." No, but
No, but the funding's like half the fun part of it.
you're right. They do receive funding from the United States State Department. And that
Who
cult
else? Who else do they get funding from?
that cult compound prints a newspaper article, or a newspaper, and the newspaper is filled with far right, crazy conspiracy theories, and that newspaper is called the Epic Times. So
You're only gonna talk about one place they get money, Craig. You're gonna have to like
right, so
do some background on.
let's rewind history
Like
for
you
a
might have
minute.
to go see a musical real quick.
Let's rewind history for a moment, folks. I want to talk to you about a new religious movement in China. Excuse me.
Jesus.
Hold on. Before I get into this, let me have another sip of my
Jesus.
alcohol.
I like. How are you just gonna leave this whole part out
I
of it?
was trying to weave. I was trying to weave around.
I saw you. You were like a lawyer, like dodging
I'm
every way
doing
you
I'm
could.
doing some time stuff here, like Christopher Nolan. Okay, so we're gonna go all the way back.
Yeah,
We're gonna go.
flashback.
We're gonna go all the way back to 1990s China. All right, and in 1990s China, things were suddenly very different than they had been before. Right, China had just kind of China was just coming out of a period where they had been very reclusive as far as like world markets were concerned, right? And it was referred to as like a period of opening up, right? So suddenly there were all of these new ideas and things popping up throughout China that had kind of the characteristics of things that you would see in nations that were bootstrapping like a form of capitalism, right? This is just kind of one of those offshoots of things that take place when you open up a system, even if you're doing it narrowly, like China was doing, in order to develop their productive forces. They opened up some capitalism, and with capitalism, you get the evils of capitalism. One of them is like these cultish grifters, right? And one of these cultish grifters was a new religious movement called Falun Dafa that was founded in the early 1990s in China. And it was founded by a man named Li Hongzhi. And Li Hongzhi founded this new religious movement. He claimed he could do all these extraordinary things, like I said, like phasing and shifting through walls. And I'm not really going to give like a platform to what his religion was all about because it's complete bullshit. But basically, what he was able to do was grift his way into getting thousands of followers and stealing all of their money and just amassing a huge fortune. Eventually, the Communist Party of China exiled him from the country because he was just too much. And so he fled to the United States. He worked with the United States government to get like a political asylum here in the United States, and he set up a compound for him and his followers who all used the asylum system to say that they were being, which they were being religiously persecuted. But there's a reason why they were being
Yeah,
religiously persecuted, right?
like
If I
there's a
start a
fine
religion,
line between like rounding up the crazies and
look, and
religious freedom.
this is why understanding the nature of authoritarianism is extremely important, right? Because this is a situation like Scientology, right? People will look around. How many Scientology documentaries do we have? There is a crisis for probably tens of thousands of people, maybe more, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. There's a crisis in which they are locked into a religious cult called Scientology in this country. And we just like don't do anything about it, right? And if we did do something about it, you'd have people screaming about how the authoritarian government moved in, whatever. I don't know. I think if you're somebody who is just explicitly anti-authoritarian, you should maybe wrestle with that idea for a little bit and think about like how you would go about removing the
Direct
elements.
attack.
I'm saying like
direct
like
attack. If
not
you're
towards you.
anti-authoritarian,
No. I'm sorry, Paul. I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it as attack.
I am eventually going to be anti-authoritarian. Like
Yes, we all want to be.
I hope for a future where
That's the goal.
authoritarianism isn't necessary.
Yes, let's
But
get
I've
there.
come to the understanding recently that it is necessary to an extent until you know
Right, right.
where I'm going until
Look, and this is another piece why like this is a great opportunity where what we were
Oh,
talking
and
about earlier.
also beautifully done how you still like totally left out two obvious names out of that whole story of epic times and its connection.
Oh,
I was just waiting for you to finally say, like, in a roundabout way, it's connected to Shen Yun.
oh, we're gonna get there. I'm not. I'm not done. We're gonna loop back.
Oh, you're not done. We're still
No,
going.
we're on
Oh.
some tangents.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm gonna put.
sorry. I
I'm
didn't
sorry. I'm
know.
gonna put
I
down
didn't.
some time on this one.
For
I
me,
know
that was
that
the
like
headline, and you're like, no, this is the banger at the end.
I thought for a second about being like, you know what, we're gonna do a short episode this week because we got so much stuff going on. Maybe this will be the only teaser that I leave in the episode. We've got so much other stuff going on with another project that we're working on that's really big that we're excited for. We've got so much like we'll just do a short episode and like apologize for it and whatever, right? But then I realized last night when this article came out, I was like, I need to talk about Falun Gong and Falun Dafa on the show right now, that we could have the longest episode in the world right now if we wanted. So,
Yeah, for
um,
real.
no, but like that, I think I don't mean it as a direct attack against you necessarily,
No, because you know
and I
how
don't
I
mean it as an
feel
attack.
now.
Yeah, I don't mean it as an attack about anybody really. What I think is important, and like I had those exact same feelings. What I think is important is that you struggle instead of struggling ideologically, like because you found if you're reaching that point where you're like, I do not like authority. That's good. That means you've found like the right end goal that we all realize like these hierarchies that have been created are fake, and we should not have them. Right? Like that's great. You've found the right end goal. I was there too, but what you have to understand is that like there is a system to get there, right? And you have to be able to like move through a system. The people like this I just wanted to loop it back a little bit to the conversation that we had about Gen Z and Lenin, right? Because right now what I would do normally back in my old days when I would argue figures of history is I'd say read Lenin. You're
Yeah.
wrong, read Lenin.
Like if you
Read
actually
Lenin.
read Lenin, it's different than how history portrays
Right.
him.
I'd
Like
say
his
you're
thoughts
you're
and goals
wrong.
and his wants, what he thought was right,
Right.
is more what I take to heart than like a few things he did that were terrible. Like, yeah, he did those things, but like if you read his thoughts and ideas, you're
Right.
like, all right, he was figuring some of this shit out a little
But
more,
what was
like
wrong with
building off of it.
my what was wrong with my strategy of telling them you're wrong, read Lenin, is they would go to the Wikipedia, they would look up Lenin, they'd go to the controversies tab, they'd find all the bad shit that he did, and they'd
But
just
like
like
not read his
spit it,
writing.
they'd spit it back at you and be like, this is why I'm never going to read anything that he wrote. This is why I don't care about what he said. He's a horrible person. He's a horrible human being. Like, I get it. That's cool. That's great. But like now, what I'll say instead of read Lenin to somebody that has a problem with authority, but like understands leftist ideals, is I'll say like think about something like Scientology. Like like I just like to go all the way back, you know, like think about something like Scientology, think about something like Falun Gong. Like what do you do? Think about like here's one that has even more brutal real world implications is think about that cult in the cult of one of the Koreas that migrated to Japan, and
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
one of the family members who was exploited by this cult murdered Shinzo Abe, right, with that homemade shotgun. Like those things, how do you reckon with those if you're not willing to take actual authority to say we need to persecute against this idea, you know?
It's to me it's very similar to how my thinking changed on re-education.
Yes.
That's what it makes me think of, because like the idea of doing such things to people and forcing people into like a re-education camp,
It's horrible to think about.
on the
It's
surface level,
horrible.
just that's
Yeah.
awful. Like that's something I wouldn't want done to me.
No,
So it's
because it means
I
like
wouldn't
what, like what's wrong with me,
like
what's wrong with my ideas?
exactly, like that's hard, but it's also one of those of like without doing that is the issue that's created from letting that go gonna long term be worse.
Right.
Like there's like if there's mind is that far trapped, I guess, in like this horrible way of thinking, either they're stuck in that and you leave them stuck in that,
Yeah.
or you try to force it out. And I think that's better than slaughtering them or killing them,
Right.
like a lot of people have done over history. Like that has been a common tactic of like, ah, we'll just get rid of them. But
Right.
like, so it's a little less bad than that, but it's also like if you don't stop that, what repercussions will that have letting
You
it
know
go?
what?
Like Scientology, they could have stopped that shit so long ago and been like, dude, you're nuts. What is happening? But instead, we see more and more people like having these horrific exits from this cult, and yet it's still up and running. And it's like,
Right.
well, at a certain point, might be it might seem terrible to take down a religious group like that, but at the same time, like it's not doing any good for the society.
Right. Think about
So it's only
QAnon.
doing harm.
Think about QAnon, you know, like
Oh
there are still
man.
people that are dedicated in their life
Oh yeah.
to QAnon. Like
Yeah.
what do you do with that? What are you supposed to just like as a society? What are we like? I mean, get rid of politics, get rid of like what the message is, get rid of all of that. Like, think about the human being that is living their life in delusion,
Mm-hmm.
and think about that at a human level. And it's like, what do you? I don't even care if it was a leftist delusion they're living in, a right wing delusion that they're living in. Like, what do we do as a society with people that are just that detached from reality? And it's kind of a newer phenomenon here in the United States, but you know, this is something that people have dealt with for a long time, you know, like,
That's something I actually have written about, and try have been trying to find a way to discuss uh, this on an episode of American illusion and delusion.
yeah,
Uh, and I was thinking about saying Delulu just to, get the young crowd. But
get them in there.
no,
Yep.
but I I strongly believe now that the delusion that is happening is directly from America's illusion. Like it everything is so shallow, surface level. It's like all the classic things we've known, like ads everywhere is not good for the human brain. Everything is quick right now. When can I get it? This hurry up, we got to do this. You have no time to relax. You're always full of anxiety because you never relax, working too hard, doing too many things. It's easy to form a delusion when there's all these illusions and you're too busy to like sit down and think about what is really important. And I think COVID, that is the only benefit we got from all that, was everyone sat down for a few weeks and they were like, what are we doing? I don't want to go back to sitting in a cubicle 40 hours a week. Well,
Yeah.
that's not how I should live my life. But that stuff I think is uh, on purpose, I guess, with the way we do media propaganda, everything in this country. Kids grow up like thinking their life should play out like a movie, which is a made up story someone just thought of. Like
Yeah.
we purposely are getting people so that it's easy to like the people in power love that guy who's like, dude, QAnon sneaking me this information. Like, yeah, they love that because you're not worried about any of the real issues.
Right. All right. So I don't want to do a whole episode on them, but I do want to loop back
Yeah,
to.
sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, dude, you're fine. It was good content. I want to loop back to.
Sometimes I feel like I need to just record myself ranting.
I know, dude. I get that all the time too. The Epic Times,
Epoch.
the Epoch Times. So to recap here, real quick, what we have is the Department of Justice, right, which is a form is a portion of the American government, is now investigating the Epic Times, which is a newspaper that is run by a cult called Falun Gong, which gets its funding from the United States government.
It's the funniest shit in the world.
And I think another piece of
That would be
Falun
like
Gong.
that would be like if the investigator for a murder did the murder, but he didn't know it, and then he's like, "Oh, oh,
You know
oh,
what?
it was me."
You know what the most exhausting fucking thing in the world is getting into an argument with absolutely anybody in the world about how a free market capitalist system with a Western liberal democracy is the most efficient means of distributing resources that the world has ever known. And then you say some shit like this, where it's like
That's efficiency.
my taxes funded a Chinese cult that made a newspaper that is now being investigated with my tax dollars for laundering money for a Chinese cult.
You know, I'll do you one better.
Yeah.
Because that's not like the only time something like this has ever happened. Let's
Right.
just say there was another vicious circle, an endless loop of
Right.
like, man, I I live in this country, but I really hope the US elects this person. I hope this person passes this policy. So I'm going to give them $1 million. You
Yeah.
know, they'll do what I want. And then they rise in power and they're like, well, these guys gave me 11 million over the years. Uh, why don't we give them like $1 billion for the year just to help them out? Give them a bunch of weapons, give them $1 billion, and then they take that money and send it back to America to pay off more politicians to send them more money to send back to American politicians.
It's a self-sustaining
like,
economy.
like, yeah, that's free market, baby, dude.
It's a free market.
Capitalism is fucking like it's back to the drug shit again. It's like, oh, Cuba had cartel or Mexico's cartel, Cuba had mafia. Dude, the entire United States government is set up as a fucking mafia. It is
Yes.
all just mafia payoffs and bribes and fucking scare tactics. It is literally the largest mafia organization in the world.
Are you
Like that whole idea of like the how we do that money and like
did you
what
just
the fuck,
stumble on that comparison by yourself just now? Because I know you're not as big of a fan of Parenti as I am.
Craig? I have become a big fan of
Oh,
Prenti
okay, okay,
because
okay.
of you.
I was like, oh, he's calling it a
Jesus.
mafia state, which was like Parenti used to
Yes.
call it the gangster state because it was
Because
literally it operates like a gang. It operates
once he said
exactly like a
that,
gangster system,
yeah, once he said that, I'm like, wait, they literally operate as gangsters
a
do.
gangster state.
Like
Yeah,
it is that. Like it is I don't
yeah.
know. But yeah, that shit
But
happens all the
mafia state
time
is like the
with our
more updated
taxes.
way to say it for sure. Because I feel like now in like when Parenti was saying gangster state in the '80s, it had a certain connotation. But I feel like if you say
Where
gangster state
that
now, it
was
has
taken over by another like
dog whistle, racist
yeah,
dog
like
whistle for black people.
cultural thing
Yeah.
that happened
But
where
now when
they're
you say
like, we got to
mafia
lock up
state,
more blacks in our fucking.
dude, you change it to
My
mafia state,
jail
which I
doesn't
think is
have
great.
enough.
Yeah, no, mafia state's good because
Yeah,
that's more
but
appropriate.
it essentially is like that. Like right off the top of my head, I was like, oh yeah, that's what happens with Israel. Our money goes somewhere, funds something terrible, and then our money goes to being investigating that terrible thing
Yep.
that we
Just
funded.
back and forth. Yep.
It's like literally all you have to do is look at history. Like
Yeah.
that's that's it. None of it's hiding. I mean, everyone knew about Iran Contra. We funded both sides. Like we do that type of shit nonstop for all of the US's existence. It's just shady dealings.
What was your first history book that made you think, um, man, maybe the stuff I learned in high school wasn't exactly what was really going on? Do you remember what your book was?
I do. I just have to. It's not brief history, is it? It's like a
People's history.
famously
People's history of the United States. Oh, that's mine. That's mine too.
people's history of the United States.
That's mine too. Howard
And
Zinn.
I was at a point in my life that I read it almost like I'm going to read this and be able to like rebut every point. Like,
Right.
and
Right.
yeah, and instead I was kind of like, hmm, it's all a sham. And like
Yeah.
so many things made I could have ended up so bad. Good thing I don't have a racist bone in me because
Right.
I could have ended up one of them because I always just went to fucking anarchy or libertarianism. Like, no one fuck with me. Like, no authority. They're all like, no authority is any better than me to be able to tell me what to do. We're all just human. I kept having those. I would read this shit. I read Chomsky when I was in high school, and I was like, yeah, everyone sucks. Like, instead of
Dude.
being like, here's a solution, I would always just take it as, well, that wouldn't work either. So I guess it just all sucks.
So you want to hear my like evolution was I read People's History and then I was like, well, goddamn, like probably all the history that I know is fake, but
Sorry, I
the
have to correct. The only other history one, it was a book about Native American tribe. That
oh yeah, yeah, those are
that was
always
probably the
powerful.
first like history that wasn't a school history book, I guess.
America's founding genocide never gets enough credit, you know. Like
Yeah,
we
like
are the ancient state of Israel.
it's like a paragraph on Trail of Tears, and then it's all fine. Like
Yeah,
that's history
yeah.
here.
Um, but yeah, so I read People's History relatively early on, and I was like, God damn, like all the history that I've ever learned is probably fake. I'm gonna have to like spend a lot of time reshaping that. But I'm so happy to live in an age where I get like unfettered access to the news. So the news is like great. Like I can keep up with like what's happening right now, and then like one of the next probably one within the next 10 books that I read that year was Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent. And then I
God,
was like, oh, okay, great. So now I can no longer trust all of the history that I've ever been taught. And now I can no longer get any accurate news from at that time,
That's
you
when
have
I
to
chose
remember it was
Anarchy. That
so
book. God.
at that time it was so hard to get news. Like, God, I'm aging myself, obviously, for anybody listening. I'm not a young man.
But it
But like
it was.
when I was in high school, you couldn't like you could go get news online, but you would be going to like CNN.com. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't
Or
go to like
Yahoo News or
Yahoo
whatever
News.
AOL put on when you logged in.
Basically, every bit of access that you had to any type of news was ultimately controlled by about five white men, right?
Yeah.
Like that was all you could see anywhere. So,
But that's
um,
totally changed since then.
well, it has. The only thing that
Well,
I will say is like
the
Twitter.
mainstream hasn't changed, but
Yeah, but now we actually have the concept of mainstream news because like back then when this stuff was like when that stuff when I was having my political awakening, like there was no concept of mainstream news. It was just the
no.
news, you know. So we have reached like kind of a new evolution in information propagation, but
Yeah, because that even goes back to the what we were talking about earlier with the Israeli troops filming themselves and putting it out onto the internet. People
exactly,
can see it. It like
that didn't exist.
wars back in the
Yeah,
day, like even 100 years ago, it was like a letter arrived by horse a week later to let you know how a battle did. Like so then like one guy writes a story based on like here's what we heard was the account in this battle, and
right.
you got that one dude's like what he thought. Now it's very different than that. It's not
Right.
just here's what happened.
You're probably very familiar now with the Gaza flotilla, right?
Yep.
But honestly, a year ago,
Nope.
before everything,
I wasn't.
you had no idea, right?
Nope.
And like imagine the guy like for those of you that don't know because a lot of people probably still don't know there was a humanitarian flotilla filled with unarmed volunteers, humanitarian aid workers back I can't even remember the exact year. I'd have to look it up. Forgive me. But they were trying to break a blockade that was taking place of Gaza and deliver humanitarian aid during one of the Israel Palestine flare ups. And Israel boarded the flotilla, and people were killed and people were injured. Humanitarian aid workers were shot and killed trying to deliver humanitarian aid. Like, imagine if we had like TikTok back then.
Jeez.
You know, like imagine somebody like live streaming being boarded and like shot with machine guns by the IDF, right? Like this stuff wouldn't be taking place. I remember watching the flotilla and watching it on CNN when this stuff was taking place and just like my heart breaking because I had already been like activated on Palestine at that point. And so seeing it, my heart was so broken, and it was like one of the saddest news stories that I'd ever seen. And then like 3 days later, not being able to find any more information about it at all, you know.
Oh
And
yeah. That's
that kind of thing wouldn't happen now. So
like
I don't really
stuff
know ultimately
disappeared
what my point
easier.
is, besides that like we are entering kind of a new phase
Yeah. That
of
stuff
all
would have
this.
they could make it disappear easier.
Yeah,
Like
very easy.
it would just be gone. Like
Yeah,
where like even the March of Return, like
I was going to bring that up earlier. Yeah,
that incident of the average American has no idea that even happened, or
even though
the
there's a
average.
fantastic documentary about it called Gaza Fights for Freedom. Gaza Fights for Freedom 2019. Everybody should watch that documentary.
Yeah,
You know what's so funny is like
that, and people should know, especially if you're listening to this. How does everyone not know what the Nakba was? Like,
yeah.
it should be common knowledge. If you don't know, look up the Nakba, read what happened.
Before October
It's
7th, I bet you
oh
before October 7th, if you polled 100,000 Americans, I bet you like maybe like 40-ish% of them could have told you what the Armenian genocide was, and
Yeah, which,
maybe like 2% could have told you what the Nakba was.
and I bet half the people that would know about the Armenian genocide would probably be because of my silly reason I knew that existed. Serge Tankian from System of a Down
Right,
is
right, right, right.
Armenian, and so
Yep,
is the guitar player. And I knew how political he was. I knew he was very outspoken about it. So I just, it was one of my favorite bands. I was like, I want to know what he's talking about. And
yeah,
I looked it up and I was like, oh. And that was one of those along the many things where I'm like, weird. A large group of people immigrate to the US at this time while we're either funding or dropping the bombs ourselves.
yeah,
And they just want to get on the other side of the bombs. Like,
right.
and it's just, and there's this idea of like, oh, they came here for a better life. Well, when we are dropping bombs on them, yeah, it's better over here. What? That's not saying America's great. It's saying we didn't want to get killed. The U.S. State Department falsified report absolving Israel on Gaza aid, says ex-official. So Stacey Gilbert quit her post as senior advisor on Tuesday, and she was senior advisor for the State Department. Like, what? Like, we're literally, it's there. Like, it's obvious out in the open. How is everyone not like? How is everyone not on the same side with this at this point? Like, we're clearly watching our own government try to cover up another government's crimes. And then even the mainstream media will even report on it and be like, yep, our own government is in on this shit. Like,
Right.
at what point? Like, what is going to be the point? Like, I don't get it. Like, it's so obvious now.
It's
Fuck.
yeah,
Uh,
it's really disheartening to watch it all
oh,
go down. You
sorry.
know.
The other one was that there's also reports that, like, officials from Israel personally threatened ICJ members and ICC members, like personally threatened them
Yeah,
themselves, not even paid someone else to threaten for them. Like, they themselves threaten these people. So, like, at what point are people going to wake the fuck up,
I
man? Like,
saw I saw some discourse around that online, and I found it really funny and telling. And the way it went down was it was like, oh, threatening ICJ officials is actually against the Rome Statute, which is like, a protection of human international human rights. Like, you technically are now a criminal, an international criminal,
a rogue state. They're a
because
pariah state,
you're
honestly.
threatening an official of the ICJ,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the discourse was from the Israel defenders was, yeah, well, Israel isn't party to the Rome Statute, so it doesn't really matter. And it's like, well, that's not really the flex that you think that it is,
Like, what?
like you're not.
Yeah,
Oh,
like,
your flex is that, like, oh, it's against international law. Well, guess what? We actually don't give a fuck about international law. So it's like, oh, that's actually not that's not like, that doesn't
yeah,
help your case in any
that's
way.
like
You're
that's
just
like
saying
your
I'm a rogue criminal.
yeah. That's like your little brother grabbing your hand and hitting you in the face with your own hand and being like, "Well, you hit yourself. Like, I
It's
didn't
those
do it." Like,
it's those people that
it's
get pulled over
it's
by the cops and they're like, I'm sorry, the you don't have gold trim on the badge on your
yeah.
name badge there. So technically, this is not a maritime court, and I'm a sovereign citizen. So you can't. And it's like, no, dude, what are you talking about? You
Yeah,
can't just
it's
fucking be like, no, international law sucks.
yeah, like, I don't understand the point of like saying we need to try Putin in the courts. They're real when it comes to that. Like, but then like they can openly just say, like, they're literally just saying, that court doesn't matter. Like,
Right.
I don't understand how people see this shit and they're not losing their fucking minds right now. Like, we're just watching children fight.
Yep.
Is all that's
Yeah.
happening. Like, and everyone's like, yeah, well, those terrorists over there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. They're the
bro,
worst.
how is that your conclusion?
Yeah.
What is happening? Oh my god. Fucking rewriting the rules as they play the game.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, dude.
Dude, if they even like did have the law and wrote it down, I bet you he'd like grab the paper and eat it and be like, nope, nope, there's no rules anywhere.
Nope.
I ate them, they're gone.
Right.
It's Looney Tune shit at this point. It's just like cartoonish, and I don't understand. It's like a time in the world, like you said, we have the most access to information ever. We can get information the live as it's happening.
Yep.
Like, we have all of this shit, and people are still seeing it and just being like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, complacent, just well, like, what, where is all this like American pride and attitude we're supposedly supposed to have? Like, everyone's just complacent. They're like, yeah, well, all this evil shit is actually happening now, but yeah, we won't
Yeah.
do anything. I know we've always said we fight for freedom and democracy, but when we really need it, nah.
Nah. Not that important.
Nah. Like, I don't know. But the generations coming up with all this information, I don't think it's a coincidence that it's not like, even when we were growing up, we were at the end of it. Everyone's got a crazy uncle who's like, don't trust the government. You know, now it's like anyone under 25 has grown up. They can look up every crime America's ever committed on their phone. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence that they're all kind of being like, yeah, this system is a joke. We're not doing it. Like, that's not a coincidence that they're seeing it. Like, all
Yeah.
you ever had to do was see it, just
Yep.
had to have the info. So I think it's eventually going to be, a good thing, but it's just so crowded with shit,
You
like
know what?
giving Reddit to AI. Like Reddit is beautiful and amazing, but there's also so much
Oh, it's
information
a
on there
fucking, it's a
that the
shithole,
world
bro. What are you
does
talking
not
about?
fucking need.
That place is a
like
fucking
like
shithole.
what are we doing?
I don't know why I spend time at that fucking shithole sometimes, but
Self-loathing.
it is. It's a bit of self-loathing. I, to go back to I kind of want to go back because this is like an analysis that's still kind of brewing in my head. The Netanyahu analysis that I gave earlier about him opening a second front with Hezbollah, and uh, as I'm thinking about that, like I don't. I don't want to come off as like too crass when I say this, but like
Not you.
I'm almost kind of like, oh, he'll lay off Gaza and open a new war with Syria, which is a much more capable fighting force. I'm almost thinking like, I don't know, like fuck it, we ball, like I'm down. I'm kind of down for that solution.
Well, and I think
Like if
if
that's
it
the worst that
if
we
it
get
went
out
to
of
Syria
this,
though, I think it wouldn't just stop there.
no, it's gonna
I think
escalate.
more
But
people would join.
yeah, but I don't want to like sound too off the rails, but I'm like kind of cool with that. You know what I mean? Like I'm okay with.
I mean, I mean,
I
yeah,
I
I mean, like, I'm not saying I'm hoping for it, but like, we've seen now, uh, the Houthis do have the capability of landing a missile in Israel. We have
Right.
all these groups surrounding Israel that are kind of, they're buddies, we could say. I don't want to call them like an axis of anything. Yeah, but like,
Right.
if that were to happen,
Let me put it to you this way.
we know who is going we know how that ends.
Right.
Like, one person's surrounded. The only problem is the US would probably get heavily involved.
Let me put it to you this way. This is the way I'm seeing it, from a
I
geopolitical
wouldn't
standpoint,
mind.
and why I'm okay with it. And it sounds insane for me to say. I think on the face of it, like that, I'm okay with an escalated regional war in the Middle East. It from like a from a humanitarian perspective, I'm not okay with it at all whatsoever. Like, obviously, I think that like an end to all wars is a
Yeah.
great thing. Obviously, right? Number one, like
Yeah, I
obviously,
would
get that out of the way.
prefer no one
Prefer
dies.
it,
I
prefer it not. But out of
preferably
the
if
available
that were
options,
realistically possible.
right? But out of the available options that I foresee in the future here, I think a regional war in the Middle East is really akin to like that's the same as saying. Before I even say what it's the same as saying, let me back up. Let me say that me personally, this is my bias, and I want to put it at the forefront so that it makes sense for everybody before I get to my analysis. My bias is that I believe American imperialism and American global hegemony, them being a kind of unipower over the globe, is a net negative for overall human social development. So,
Well, yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. If
It
we're
sounds very
here,
obvious when you
yes.
spell it out that way to anybody that like sees the world our way, right? So I think that's a net negative. So I think anything that provides a net negative to the United States' global world hegemony is a positive thing for overall global human social development, right? So with that being said, like when I look at a regional war kicking off between Israel and Syria in the Middle East, expanding out to a further regional conflict in that region, what we're really talking about is a expansion of an already existing proxy war that exists and is currently ongoing in that same region. So expanding that proxy war and expending more US resources on that war is like a perfect example of revolutionary defeatism, which I think is like something that serious communists that think that there's a possibility of making any kind of actual change in the imperial core should look at, right? So if
Yeah.
that is happening and that's taking place and we're overall like lessening the amount of world power the United States has, I think that that's a net positive for the world.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
that's
it's
just
also
how I'm looking at it. I'm
distracting.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's that whole idea. Like, I think a decent amount of people would understand it quickly if they knew it, if they knew
Yeah.
that what it is. But like, a big part of it for me is like, it's just that idea of like, out of sight, out of mind. Like, if you're focused on right now Ukraine and the Middle East, who's America's other big boogeyman? How much can they focus on China and the big money moves China can make while America is so focused on what's going on here?
Right.
Like, so much money is being poured into there, so much ammunition and bombs and all this. Like, there's only so many things the tentacles can do at once.
Right.
And it's gonna them continuing to focus on these two. I'm not even gonna say my opinion on these two things they're pouring money in. We know how I feel. And like, the more they keep doing that, like, the less control they got over all this other shit. So
Exactly.
i'm all I'm all for whatever gets us there quicker. Like,
Yeah.
whatever gets,
If it gets to the point
honestly,
where it's like,
we need people first. I think we need more people to understand the full truth. Not,
yeah, for
I think
sure.
it's purposely being co-opted at this point, just like anything else. Of like, if people are going to get out of this trap and realize it's fake media, trap them into this other thing before they
Right.
before they open a Marxist book and realize it's not as scary as we told them. Like,
right.
That is happening. And I think before all the major changes happen from the people. So before we can even if America falls apart, we need everyone to understand what we have to do for each other to build a society we want.
Right.
Like, unless we know that, it won't matter if it crumbles. We're still sitting there with nothing. Like, we need people to understand what we're fighting for.
Absolutely.
Like, why this needs to happen. What happens after? Like, if an empire falls, what do we do after?
Yeah.
Because it might fall itself.
Yeah. You never know.
At this point, like, yeah, we're getting the Imperial boomerang, but like, I don't know if it's going to work at this point. I think enough people are kind of being like, yeah, we're not liking the authoritarian rule.
Right.
Like, we're getting some of it, but I don't know.
I agree.
I'm just hoping people educate themselves. Knowledge truly is power.
All right,
take a look. It's in a book.
Reading Rainbow. Actually, dude, we should do a time thing where I just do the intro right now and then cut it and splice it into the beginning and then make everybody think we did like a...
And then
there we go.
Shen Yun.
Welcome to another episode of From Right to Red. I'm Craig, and I'm joined with my co-host Paul, and we are diving directly into a conversation that Paul and myself partook in earlier today. Let's listen in. And then that'll just go right into the beginning of us talking.
The only problem is me laughing so hard I hit my head on the wall behind me. It might be in your last word or two, but
it's gonna be
it's so good.
And then we'll leave this part in at the end where people will kind of like piece it together.
Oh my god, I love that.
We know you could've stayed home, just cried and cussed. May or your guns go off if it's time to bust. May or they tanks have time to rust. They got the armies turning bullets into gold. They got the hookers turning tricks into cold. And every time the police kicks in the dough, an angel gas breaks dips in the O. And even if a D-boy flips in my O, it ain't enough to buy shit anymore. Sleep in the doorway, piss on the floor. Look in the sky, wait for missiles to show. It's finna blow, cause they got the TV, we got the truth. They own the judges and we got the proof. We got hella people, they got helicopters. They got the bombs and we got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. We got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. We got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. We got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. Talk about it, I show. Be about it, I know. Talk about it, I show. Be about it, I know. I just spit the dope lines, I don't snort them. Tell the boss to call police to escort them. You don't ride out them lies, you just quote them. Get offline, plug into this modem. No, you can't outvote them, the rules are still golden. Only jewels we holdin' if we guardin' our scrotum. If If you press your ear to the turf that is stolen, you can hear the sound of limitations exploding. Please, sir, may we have another portion? We're children of the beast that dodged the abortion. Neck plate firm between the floor and the portion. When shut your shit down, don't call it extortion. Caution, we're coming for your head. So call the feds and get files to shred. Every textbook read said bring you the bread, but guess what? We got you instead.
We got the guillotine.